Hello and welcome back to my world of food. You hear people go to a restaurant and they say that it's such a special treat. They had steak and it was done so nicely. Steak doesn't have to be a special treat in a restaurant. I am going to show you how to do a steak every bit as good as you'll get in any top restaurant, how to select it and how to cook it. And it will be every bit as good. You will really enjoy it. Keep watching. Now, I'm not a fan of storing steak in the plastic. Makes it sweat, gets very wet, not pleasant. So store the steak on a plate, cover it in paper towel, and then take it out about half hour before you're ready to use it, so that it gets to air temperature, and that way then it will be taste a lot nicer and be a lot better for cooking. A steak cooked from cold tends to be a little bit harder and you don't enjoy the fragrance and the flavours that come with it. So half hour before, take it out and then we'll see. I brought 3 examples of steaks. These are rump steaks. Now a rump is sort of in the shape of a triangle, so it's narrow at one end and thicker at the other. A lot of people who like lean meat will take the steak from the wide end. It's not a good choice. There's a lot more connective tissue at the wide end, the grain is slightly coarser, and it doesn't always be a good steak. That's why people will tell you, oh, I'm not a great fan of rump steak, it's not so nice. Well, I'm going to show you why not. Okay. So if you look, like wood, the grain will always go in one direction. So whenever you cut it, you always cut against the grain, which softens it up. But at the coarse end, you also have a big run of gristle. Now this will become very tough when you try to cook it. And again, you've got gristle there, and it's very coarse grain at the top and gristle here at the bottom. So if you're buying a steak, this is not the one you should be looking for. Now, this is more like the steak you should be going for. Nice fine grain going through it. Nice bit of fat to give it a bit of cover. Now, if you don't like fat, then it's far better buy it and cook it and then trim it off before you eat it. When you get a piece of beef that hasn't got much fat on it, it usually means it hasn't been well fed and it's not going to taste nice, and invariably it will be a little bit on the tough side. So this is the type of steak you're looking for. This comes from what's called a point end. So you'll have a leaner side and then a little bit more fat. The one with the fat is the one you're really looking for. This is the tenderest side of the steak. Now, as you get towards the bottom of the triangle, the meat becomes a lot smaller. The higher meat is, you'll get a lot more fat. This is the one you want. The grain is really fine here. Hardly any connective tissue. nice bit of fat which will cook and melt into the meat, softening it up and giving it a lot more flavour. So this is, if you look at this steak, this is the type of steak you should be getting if you're buying a rump steak. The middle steak, perfectly acceptable, will taste very nicely, but the first one, avoid at all costs. It's not going to be nice, and you'll join the growing army of people who say, I don't like rump steak, it's not very tender. This one and this one, and you'll grow and you will say, this was lovely, I really enjoyed it. This is what you should be looking for in a rump steak. Now, so about 15 minutes before we cook it, apply a liberal amount of salt. Now don't worry about applying too much, because about 30% of it comes off in the frying pan. So if you under season it, you'll actually lose a lot in flavour. Then we will put a bit of pepper, and then we'll turn it over. Now we start to heat the pan up, and then we put some oil. So a nice neutral oil like sunflower oil would be perfect. So we add the sunflower oil to the saucepan. And then when that gets hot, we add the thyme and the garlic. And let that cook for about a minute first before we put the steaks. When we get the oil nice and hot, we want to put the steaks in, and we want to seal them so that the juices don't come out. So we put them for about 30 seconds on one side. When that goes brown, we then turn them over in 30 seconds on the other side, and then we turn the heat on the saucepan down. So the steaks are now starting to cook. Lovely sizzle on the pan. So about 30 seconds later, when they're brown, we'll turn them over. When they start to go brown, we turn them over, and we'll give that about another 30 seconds on a high heat, and when we'll turn down to more medium heat. When we have the other side brown, we then turn the heat down to a medium heat, and all we'll probably be cooking these boys for a medium to rare will be about 2 minutes each side. So now when the steaks are nearly cooked, we add the butter, and this is more so that when the butter melts, we baste the steak with it, and it brings out the flavour in the steak. So it'll take about a minute now for the butter to melt, and then we pour the butter over the top of the steak. So now we get the butter and we baste the steak with the butter, which has now got the flavour of the garlic and the thyme and a bit of salt and pepper that would have came off into the oil. And now we're all done, and this steak will be as soft as anything, have a lovely flavour, and be every bit as good as any steak that you'll buy in a top restaurant paying stupid prices for it. So next time when you have a steak in a restaurant, oh, the chef done it specially, you'll say, well, it's not as good as the one I done at home. Hope you enjoyed the film. Please like and subscribe so we can make more like this. Thank you very much.